So today's episode is our annual Valentine's Day episode,
Yes.
and we are only 8 days late, which is perfectly fitting for us.
Yep. My wife would not be surprised that I'm eight
No,
days late for the Valentine's Day episode. You're listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek.
today's episode is about love and love songs and breakup songs, and that's what I've chosen to focus on to open this up. We talked about that we're more than a week past Valentine's Day for our annual Valentine's Day episode. I was looking through my uh, YouTube music liked list, which is more than 800 songs, looking for various love songs that I could add to the playlist or to the then and now recommendations. And at a quick glance, I realized that very similar to as we talked about in the last episode, where I have a rule where about no more than one song on a playlist can be a female artist. 90% of my songs have to be about breakups. Like I have every song as I'm going through, I'm like, breakup song. Oh, they die. Breakup song. I'm just like, holy shit. I'm not sure I'm well equipped for an episode about love. Um, and what that got me then, I can think about times where I was really down and I would, whether back when I had a Walkman and those cheap ass little speakers, the headphones they gave you, connected to them. And I remember, I distinctly remember back, it's probably 30 years ago, sitting on a couch playing a song over and over and over again because I was just in a bad place. And it was a breakup song. Don't remember exactly which one it was, but it doesn't matter because that episode has happened over and over and over again in my life. I just dive into music. The most depressing music makes me depressed for a while, then eventually it pulls me out of my bad spot and into a much better place. And
Dude,
where
I have to chime in just because you just made me. So first of all, I'm in the exact same boat, right? I look through my songs, I'm like, is it a love song if it's actually about love that's over? But I just as a matter of like comparison, my current wife, Dawn, broke up with me in the middle of law school, or I broke up with her. It's really hard to tell how that happened, but we were definitely not dating for a little bit towards the end of law school. And Joshua Judge's Ruth by Lyle Lovett came out in 1992. And I listened to She's Already Made Up Her Mind
yeah.
400 times. And what's even worse about it was at the time I was living at Rick's house with Rick and his new wife. They were renting out a room to me, and I would I would lay on the couch in their living room and use their stereo and play it over and over. And they would tiptoe around me like, and I know all they were wondering is why did we let this clown live here? This is the most depressing person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, it's like the same thing. Going to go back to Lyle Lovett. Nobody Knows Me is the song that I go
Mm-hmm.
to over and
Yeah,
over
that's a
again. And
good
I'm going to
one.
say that a lot. In a previous episode, I said exactly a lot. In this one, I'm going to say over and over again, but I don't care. But that's what we do. I mean, that's why we're doing a podcast largely about music and playlists and other cultural references, but it's the music that drives it for me. But it got me thinking, like I sit there and wallow in this and I listen to songs and then, and then later a song will remind me of something that I won't want to listen to. All of which brings me to what is actually my opening for this episode, which is a concert I went to, which I believe I described previously. It was Corey Brannon. I talked a little bit more about the opening act, John Snodgrass, who was high as a kite and could barely function.
Right.
But why that concert stands out for me is Corey Brannon has multiple albums. I like his older stuff, I think, a little bit more than some of his newer stuff. I like all of his stuff, though. He's one of my favorite artists. While we were at the concert, people would shout out song titles and a lot of them from earlier albums. And multiple times, I mean, most of them were love songs. And turns out they were probably about his ex-wife. And he would be like, nope, I don't do that stuff anymore. I'm not going to play it. And he's in a much darker place, and his music benefits in some ways from it. But I loved some of that earlier stuff. There's one of the greatest gifts I've ever received was this past Christmas, and it was handwritten lyrics from him for his song Easy. And my wife had contacted him. Apparently, she exchanged emails with him because he
Wow.
wasn't like he's not a big business. She's like, "Have you sent it yet?" And he's like, "I'm working on it." So, but first off,
He's the Chris Derrickson of music.
I'm like super jealous that I wasn't the one emailing Corey. I'm like, after I got the gift, I was like, "Can I have his email?" I was like,
That's awesome.
but it's handwritten, and it's sitting downstairs, and I'll go down and I'll look at it. And as much as music means to us, it got me thinking, like, these people that actually create songs, write songs, record songs, and have to do them in live concerts over and over again. What does it mean when life has moved on for them? So they have a breakup or whatever. In this case, it was a breakup. And it's stuff that he was like, nope, I don't do that stuff anymore. And he actually did play Easy, which was the song I think I said that at the concert, and he did it for me. I mean, so my wife had gone down and said, "Can you play this song?"
Is that
And
right?
it was one of the second or third to last songs, and he looked up. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'll do that for you." And he did it, and he got through it really well. It was a great version, but you could tell. I mean, it was painful for him. So, I mean, Valentine's is all about love. And somehow you and I seem to get through this stuff by listening to breakup songs.
That's right.
So that's how we're going to start our annual episode for Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day,
Happy
Chris.
Valentine's Day, motherfuckers.
Well, that is our topic, as you can tell, that we wanted to talk about love songs, I guess, for lack of a better word. In our case, it may be more about just romance songs, movies, romantic comedies are going to come into great play, I think, as we discuss this stuff. And as we already pointed out, we came up with this idea, which is perfect for Valentine's Day, about 10 days after Valentine's Day.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it's not a good topic ripe for discussion. There are a lot of great recommendations, I think, that we can discuss. But I do think it bears discussing the difference between Chris and Tom in the late 80s and Chris and Tom in 2024, as far as how we look at all of that stuff. And as is usually the case, I don't think we're unique in any way, but I'm a lot grumpier these days. There are not a whole lot of romantic grand gestures I could be accused of in the last 5 years, I'm afraid.
No, in fact, it's a preview, but we have a question this week from Jonathan, and I'm not even sure I can answer it, but we'll get there when we get there.
We'll get there. But I will say that still at my advanced age, I'm a sucker for romantic comedies, films. As you said, I'm a sucker for love songs, especially breakup songs. I don't read a lot of romance books. I'm not a big romance novel guy, so I don't have a lot to discuss in terms of the written word. But movies are great, man, and that is one thing I think that consistently I've always enjoyed, even when I was 22, 23, 27, 28. A good rom-com, I wouldn't admit it to other people, but I would watch those frequently. And I still do. I still enjoy them. And as a matter of fact, just kind of this past weekend went on a bit of a binge because of the algorithm it was either Hulu or Netflix or one of them. I just kept watching all these shows from like the early 2000s that were just great romantic comedies.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for romantic comedies. We'll joke, and I don't mean any offense by, the chick flicks or whatever we want to call them.
Right, right.
I can't remember the last chick flick that I watched that I didn't secretly love. Like, they're just fun, they're enjoyable, and it's like Three's Company episode writ large. It's the same pattern. You know what's going to happen. They're not meant for each other. They somehow end up together. They're climbing, and then they hit the peak, and then something horrible goes wrong and they break up. and then you go through that down period, and then maybe they'll come back together. Most
Yeah.
likely they will.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect example of genre filmmaking, right?
Yeah.
The structure is almost always the same. The difference is probably primarily the performances and who's playing in those roles. Some people are great at it and some people aren't. And to a lesser extent, the writing in the sense of the dialogue, I think. Because I think writing romantic comedy good romantic comedy is difficult. But even the crappy ones, you know, you can get sucked into sometimes. But there are certain actors and actresses I think that are just outstanding in those kind of roles. And even if I don't like them in other things, I tend to like them in rom-coms.
Yeah, there's something, I don't know, we draw comfort from the breakup songs, apparently. There's something comforting knowing how it's going to end up. I mean, it's a formula. And even like you said, sometimes even the worst acted ones are like, it's still kind of fun. I mean, so I mean, we make fun of, and I'm sure other cultures make fun of how formulaic our movies are. But sometimes you just want to sit down with a good breakup song or a great rom-com and chill out for an hour and a half.
Yeah, for
And
sure. And I think love songs are the same way, right? I mean, there's love songs in every genre of music there is, but I tend to believe that the best ones are either country or alt country.
oh yeah,
And as I was thinking about that and just trying to think about things to discuss for this particular topic, I came back pretty much to the same thing that you started with, which was, yeah, most of these aren't really love songs. They're I used to love her, or I still do, and she doesn't love me, or the same thing from the female perspective. But there is definitely a draw to that stuff. There's a connection that the good writers can make that get you every time.
and here's the most uplifting ones that I can identify. There's certainly love songs, like Absolutely by the Subdudes is a great love song, typical Subdued song. I love it. But I don't have a lot of those in my library. The three that I wanted to quickly highlight are Epic Love by Scott Miller, The Unfortunate Kind by BJ Barham, and a Corey Brandon song, shockingly, Don't Go. But all three of those songs, particularly the last two, BJ Barham's song, The Unfortunate Kind, and Corey Brandon's Don't Go, are about love over a lifetime. And then the singer in their late ages has lost their wife, and how, so there's a lot of love there, but it's still at the very end that they're dealing with separation and losing
Loss.
that love.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to the song that I think makes you cry, the Hank Williams' granddaughter, the one where the guy goes off to war, comes back and asks her to marry
Oh
him.
yeah, that was your song,
That was my song, but it's
and it did, man. That just tore my heart out. That one gets me still every time.
yeah,
What
I'll
the hell
have
is
it
the name
before
of
the
that
end of
song?
the episode,
Yeah.
but
Well, in that regard, there was a song that I actually was going to use as my playlist pick, and I was I was thinking over, as is usually the case, I had a list of like 4 or 5 songs that I thought I might pick for the playlist, and I've narrowed it down to one we'll discuss later. But I think probably my favorite feel good love song. You don't really discover it's a love song until the last 2 or 3 lines of the song, and it's "Chucky's in Love" by Ricky Lee Jones. That song, you know, I feel like everybody would know it. I feel like at least everybody in our generation knows it. I'm not sure if younger kids do, but Ricky Lee Jones was not particularly famous. I remember hearing that song only because my dad saw her perform on Saturday Night Live, like in 1979, I assume. And he bought the album because he liked that song so much. And it's a great album. And she put out a couple other good albums. But that song, Chucky's in Love, got a ton of airplay, radio play for about a year, and then it disappeared. She's got a really unique, odd delivery, the way she sings. She wrote it, obviously. Her lyrics are really interesting. It paints a real picture of a neighborhood. It feels like a New York neighborhood. And everybody's giving this one guy hell because he's acting so off. And and the only answer seems to be that he must be in love. And then at the very end, you find out that, as she says, he's in love with the little girl singing this song. And to
Mm.
me, that's just such a hopeful, like happy love song, that it is actually the first thing I thought of when we were thinking about love songs. It's not the one I'm recommending for the playlist, but it's absolutely fantastic. The whole album is really good, but if you haven't listened to Chucky's in Love, or you haven't listened to it recently, you should throw it on, because I listened to it a couple times leading up to this episode, and it's just as good as it ever was.
Yeah, and I have a couple that I find really uplifting, but I've actually used them on previous episodes. I mean, just one of the more recent ones with Smooth Hound.
Yeah, that was a great song.
Yeah, that's a love song and uplifting and very unlike me. So
So you want to discuss recommendations?
sure, let's do that. And I want to say, we generally we talked about this a little bit with our playlists last week. I don't think we go for obscure all the time, but we always try not to be obvious. I really don't. So I've broken every rule. I sort of gone with some more obvious choices, and I've chosen the same actor for both of my movies, and I think you chose the same actor too. But my first choice was one that I can't believe I actually get to recommend in some sort of formal way, because it was a movie that I've loved my whole life, and it's Valley Girl, starring Nick Cage and Deborah Foreman, who are the main two actors. It's directed by Martha Coolidge. Didn't do a lot of research on her, but I know she also did Real Genius. 80s movie, and we all go through, it's like every generation complains about the hairdos of the generation before, or the way they talk, the way they dress. And Valley Girl perfectly captures two of those cultures coming into clash. You know, you got the Valley Girl, and the way they spoke, you know, oh my God, and all that stuff. And and then more of the punk culture, dressing in leather and listening to punk music and hating the other side. So all very formulaic, also just another version of Romeo and Juliet with the cultures clashing. But Nicolas Cage did an awesome job playing punk, punk rock, whatever you want to call it, back in the 80s, falling for Deborah Foreman's character, who's just a classic Valley girl. So they'll show her trying to hang out at his clubs, and he goes to their parties. Of course, it's totally unacceptable that, you know, she'd be dating someone like that, and vice versa. But just the insight into 80s culture, those two is particularly is great. I like Nick Cage. I think I like him as an actor, and I thought he did a great job. Deborah Foreman didn't do a whole bunch after this, but I was absolutely in love with her when the movie came out.
Yeah, me too.
So, but you know, one of my favorite lines is, and I'm probably gonna butcher it here a little bit, but where Nicolas Cage thinks they're gonna break up, or I guess they do break up, and he's like, "Fuck you for sure, totally," like mimicking the Valley Girl language, but in his own way. And of course, they do get back together. So I hate to ruin that for those who might go out and watch it.
Spoiler.
But I know it is a spoiler alert, but it's what you said. It's that rom-com. I mean, it's the same thing. They reach that peak, they break up, they think it's over, and then at the end, there's a hope that they're going to get back together, and that's what it's all about. And that's what this episode is about. So my recommendation is, actually, I'm sorry, I did not say the year, not that it shouldn't, but I think it was 1983's Valley Girl, as I said, directed by Martha Coolidge. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't think I can give it 5 out of 5 though, but it's pretty close. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5, both for sentimental value and I think just for sheer entertainment.
Yeah, that one, that's funny because I knew about that movie for years before I ever saw it, because it was kind of an indie,
Yeah.
it was under the radar. It wasn't playing at a whole lot of malls, even though that whole Valley Girl thing, I remember there were a couple songs that, the people put out. What do they call those songs that are just gimmicky songs? Anyway, those came out, and I think they were after that movie. I think the movie actually started kind of a movement towards recognizing that those cultures. I don't think a lot of people saw it. I'd be interested to see exactly, how it did when it was in the theater. But I saw it maybe, it might have even been 10 years after it was out in theaters that I finally saw it. And it felt a little dated by then, but I got to
Yeah.
tell you, it was still just as good. And because of the nature of the film and because it was this kind of romance genre film, now it just felt like it was a romance set in a prior time. And it really captured, I think, like you said, that era. Even though I didn't grow up in either of those cultures, it really felt authentic, and it wasn't just like sarcastic jokes about it. But I agree. I think that that's a good choice for a romance movie. My pick for back then came out just about 4 years after Valley Girl, starring Nicolas Cage. Somehow we both zeroed in on one of the craziest actors in Hollywood for our romance movie picks. And I'm not sure everybody would look at this movie as a romance, but I really do. And it's entirely because of the end of it, really. But the movie is Raising Arizona. It was directed by the Coen brothers. I believe it might have been their second film. And it starred Nicolas Cage, it starred Holly Hunter, and the supporting cast in that movie was just amazing. It's just a murderer's row of great character actors. John Goodman, William Forsythe, those two played brothers who were escaped convicts. Randall Tex Cobb played a biker demon, and he was the scariest creature I'd ever seen on film, I think, up to that point. And then there were a whole bunch of other actors and actresses. If you look through the IMDb page, all people you recognize, later on, just doing excellent work, movie after movie after movie. But Raising Arizona is without a doubt my favorite movie by the Coen brothers. And that's saying something because I love almost every film they've ever made. And I just think they hit it out of the park with this really quirky, strange comedy about a kind of a lifelong thief who falls in love with a patrol officer in Arizona. And there is an extended scene where he goes to a quick shop or a grocery store. He doesn't have any money, and he's only going there because he has to steal diapers. He needs diapers for a kid that they've kidnapped. And I believe it was one of five, like it was quintuplets or something like that. It is such a complicated, strange, quirky plot. But the thread that runs through the whole thing is he's doing everything for her. He gave up a life of crime for this woman, Holly Hunter's character, but then he went back to a life of crime because they couldn't have a baby and she wanted a baby, so he decided to steal one. And the ending of this movie is so sweet and so kind of romantic in the grand scheme of things, about a couple that's basically, we think anyway, it's kind of a dream sequence, so it's hard to tell, but at least they're thinking that they're going to age together and have a huge family and live happily ever after. And it is a great comedy, it's a great romance, it is absolutely a great film. It is definitely the film that really launched the Coen brothers as feature filmmakers. They had made Blood Simple before that, which got a lot of critical acclaim, but this was a completely different kind of movie, and it showed that they were just quirky as hell and that they could pretty much tell any story they wanted to on film.
Yeah, and on the episode outline, I put in bold with an exclamation point, "You bastard," because
I saw that.
yeah, it was that it. I think I probably still would have chose Valley Girl because I'm not as smart and insightful as you, because I've often just thought of this as a comedy, but it is truly a romance. And for all the reasons you stated, it's great. It's probably also my favorite Coen Brothers movie. And I think it set the bar so high that I've had a slight disappointment in others because, I mean, again, the Coen Brothers are great. I've seen almost all their movies. But it's the sweet ending and acting in this. And it's over the top acting, like for a purpose. It's all great. Like everyone hits their characters so well. So I couldn't have chosen a better one.
Yeah, that's a movie I watch at least once a year. I go back, I rewatch a lot of Coen Brothers stuff, but that one is good for, as I said, at least one rewatch every year for sure. So those are our recommendations for now. I will give that my rating, and because it is, as being one of my favorite Coen Brothers films, it basically means it's one of my favorite films, period. And I give that 5 out of 5 egg burritos with sour cream, which means it will hit the page on our website of recommendations, because we've decided to let you guys know anything that we recommend 5 out of 5 egg burritos with sour cream. It makes it to the website, and you can find our list if you go to the website, which is thirdsonginpodcast.com.
Yep, nice plug. Why don't we complete the trifecta, which is the Nicolas Cage trifecta. So my recommendation for now, which is just barely now because it's the year 2000. So Tom and I think, have struggled with that year because we said before 2000 and after 2000. But on the website, I have indicated that 2000 and later is now.
Is what
So
we
even though
consider
that's
now for recommendations.
24-year time period right now. But for my now recommendation, I went with a movie directed by Brett Ratner, The Family Man, and starring Nicolas Cage, Tia Leone, and Don Cheadle. And all three of them are awesome in the movie. So it's a story of this big time asshole finance man who's having sex with everyone he wants. He gets a I think a missed message from an old college sweetheart who was Tia Leone, and he's slightly intrigued. Um, and we'll go through the whole angel type of thing. He runs into Don Cheadle in what's a convenience store robbery, and he sort of talks his big talk. And Don Cheadle basically says, "Careful what you wish for." And he wakes up the next morning and he's in this tiny little house with kids and Tia Leone in bed next to him. He's totally confused, runs out and drives off in the family van, goes up to New York, and no one knows who he is. So he's now in this life that he could have chosen. It's this idea of these forks in our past where we make a key decision and we miss out on a life that could have been. And this one is this sweet but struggling life with Tia Leone's character, and all this stuff they went through. And of course, he realizes how much more important all that is than all the money and everything else. And there's a point where he's a good businessman, so he's about to make it big, and she doesn't want it because it would mean moving the kids to New York and giving up on their small little community. And it's at that point that he starts to realize what is most important. And then of course he goes to sleep, and the next morning he wakes up again in his current life, and all he's trying to do is get back to her. So it's a great scene at the end where she's flying off, I think, to Paris. She got this big job, and all she was contacting him for is she had some stuff of his. And he goes and he tells her that he had this, he doesn't know if it was a dream or what it was, but please don't get on the airplane and sit and talk with him. And the closing scene is the two of them just talking at an airport cafe, laughing, and you don't know where it goes, but you like to think that they maybe find a way to rekindle their old romance and get to what was important for them. So it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's totally formulaic. It's totally, in a lot of ways, cheesy. It's a classic rom-com, and I love it to death.
Yeah,
And
it's a sleeper. That never even occurred to me when I was thinking about now, but that is a movie that Shawshanks me when it's on. I watch it if wherever it is in the movie, I just sit and watch the end of it. And you're right, it's formulaic as hell,
yeah,
but it's a great choice. And it's because of the performances, right? Because Nicolas Cage plays that role so well. Both of those roles, kind of the king of the universe guy, but
Yep.
then also this guy who's trying to figure out where the hell he is and how things have, the rug has been pulled out from under him. And Tia Leone in 2000, I don't think I was in love with anybody more than her. So
Yeah. And one of my favorite lines, and I've repeated this so many times, he's in his past life, or this dream life, where he's selling tires, and he opens up his desk drawer and there's a little bottle of scotch, I think. And he says, "You must have needed this every day."
yeah, that's a great choice, man. I think that's a
Yeah.
sleeper that people don't know about. That if they look it up, I think they'll really enjoy that. That's a great romance.
And I don't give him out lightly, and I'm not doing it to crowd the website, but it is truly one of my favorite movies of all time. Deserve it or not, I'm giving it 5 out of 5 egg burritos with sour cream.
No, I think that's a good call. So my recommendation for now is, I know, National Treasure, Book of Secrets. We're just going to go Nicolas Cage across the board. That's what my actual recommendation is a movie written and directed by Zach Braff of Scrubs fame, and now I guess cell phone commercial fame. He wrote and directed a movie that came out in 2004 called Garden State. He's done a couple other films. I think he's a good filmmaker. I think he's really solid. He hasn't made a lot, and now I think he's just as famous for doing a podcast about the show Scrubs that he was on for about 10 years, about 10 years ago, maybe. But Garden State is a full-on romantic comedy about a kind of over-medicated actor who suffers from depression or maybe doesn't, who had a kind of a catastrophic event in his past as a little kid that changed the kind of the whole course of his life. And at a certain point, well, he basically returns from Los Angeles to New Jersey because his mother has passed away. And during that time, he reconnects with his father, who has created many of the problems he's faced over the last 10, 15 years of his life. He also reconnects with all these buddies and friends from high school. And he also meets Natalie Portman and falls in love. And she is just a quirky, oddball character. She pulls it off really, really well. She has her own odd family history and she has her own issues. And it's just about the two of them connecting in this very short period of time while he's there for the funeral. And it is one of the films that I ended up kind of binging through over the past weekend. It came up on the algorithm and I thought, oh, I haven't watched that for a while. And I watched it and I just thought, geez, I forgot how much I love this movie. It's really sweet. It's really well acted. The dialogue is very, very funny. I think Zach Braff is a really funny guy. And it has a similar ending because of course this is kind of the genre, right? And it ends in an airport and it ends with them sitting together and deciding to take a chance on this relationship that has only started. But it's the trip to get there is so funny. It's a little surreal. It's a little odd at times, but the supporting cast is really funny with him, and it starts out with this kind of generalized malaise feeling to the actual filming of it. And it's slowly, as Zach Braff's character gets off of all of these psychotropic meds he's been on and starts to feel things again, everything about the movie starts to get clearer and clearer. And I think even the shots are more clarified as you go through. So I'm going to give it 5 out of 5. I know I throw those around a little more easily than you do, but I will tell you that of all the rom-coms that came out in the early 2000s, and there were a lot of great ones, it's probably one of the best. Well, it might not be the best, but it is certainly one of the best.
That's a great choice. I think I may have seen it at one point, but have not gone back to look at it for a while. So I will definitely check it out.
Yeah,
I
it's
like
a
Zach
different
Braff a lot.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different character than what he plays in Scrubs, which I love that show. But he's a good actor. He's really funny. He's got a great sense of timing, and he wrote the whole thing, and you can just feel, there's just some great dialogue throughout, some really funny exchanges.
And I'm a huge fan of Natalie Portman too.
Yeah,
she's
so
great.
good. I think we're ready to talk about a question from a listener.
Yeah, we are. I was just gonna say we're rom-comming the hell out of it.
We are doing that.
Yeah, I have a question from Jonathan from Lonelyville, New York. And uh, his question is, what is the most romantic gesture in your life?
Well, let me take a run at that first.
That'd be awesome.
While you try to think of an answer to this question, uh, I am I'm embarrassed to say that the most romantic gesture in my life was not one that was made by me. Um, and it wasn't a Valentine's Day gesture. It was actually a Christmas gift that my wife gave me quite a while ago, maybe 12. No, it's over 20 years ago because I think it was either before my daughter was born or just after. So right in that range. And I got an envelope for Christmas under the tree, and I opened the envelope, and it was a card that basically was a printout of tickets to go see a band, one of my favorite bands at the time, still one of my favorite bands, called Slobberbone. They've since broken up. They were from Texas, and they had at that time, in fact, I think they were just getting ready to break up because they were tickets to their final annual New Year's Eve show in a little town outside of Dallas, Texas. They'd been doing it for 10 years prior to that. It was a big deal. I had no idea about the show at all. I don't think. She just looked it up and figured it out. So it was billed as their final New Year's Eve show as a band. She bought plane tickets and a hotel room for one night. And the way it worked out was we flew out on New Year's Eve day. We arrived at Dallas's airport. We took a cab to the hotel, which was, as I said, I can't remember the name of the town, but it was outside of Dallas proper. We checked in. I think we took a shower, got dressed, found someplace to eat in this little dinky little suburban town. I don't think we did any better than a little chain steakhouse or something like that. Went back to the hotel, waited until about 9:30, and then we were able to walk to the bar because she had found a hotel that was only a block or two away from the bar. We walked to the bar. We went in. It was the perfect picture of a down and out roadhouse in Texas. We got there way early because we didn't know what to expect. There was an opening band. I can't remember a damn thing about them, but right around 11 o'clock, Slobberbone got on and they played until about 2 in the morning. And it was one of the best shows I've ever been to in my life. I couldn't believe that, like 8 hours earlier, we were, in Joliet, Illinois. And now we were sitting listening to my favorite band where they live. We saw the show. We went back to the hotel. Like I said, it was probably 2 o'clock. We woke up about 7 or 8. A friend of ours who lived in the area picked us up, took us to breakfast, took us back to the airport. We flew back to Chicago, and we were home on New Year's Day by like 9 o'clock that night. It was a whirlwind rock and roll tour. And to me, it was one of the most romantic things my wife has ever done. It was one of the coolest gifts I've ever received. So what'd you do?
I'm going to cop out like you. It's not anything I did. It's what I had done for me. So I already talked about the handwritten lyrics from
that should be on the
Corey
list, by the way.
Brannon. That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
But mine, and this one was like, holy crap, how did you figure this out? So I was also going to a concert, total surprise. I think it was actually for my birthday. But it was tickets to go see the Honey Dogs in Minneapolis. And so the Honey Dogs are still kicking. They've been around for 30 plus years, out of the Twin Cities. They had a couple, I wouldn't say pop, but they had a couple songs that were probably regional hits, but it was a little closer to pop. But they've done like a concept album. The lead singer is Noah. No, it's Adam. There's brothers in the band, but the lead singer is Adam Levy, or Adam Levi. He has done some solo stuff. He's in all kinds of bands all over the place. But the point is they're not a huge band in any way, shape, or form. Like if you look through my stuff, you'd probably be able to figure out that I like Slobberbone. I have no idea how she knew this. My wife bought me these tickets. I have no idea how she knew I liked the Honey Dogs, but they are probably one of my like secret loves. I don't know if I casually mentioned it But we
Mhm.
went, it was this little small club standing right at the foot of the stage. It was a great show. Same thing. I don't remember who the opening band was, but the Honey Dogs were fantastic. It was just a great show. And it was a band that I didn't even know I wanted to see. And it ended up being one of the best concerts I've ever been to. And so it's just that thing of, knowing what a good gift is, finding something that connects with your partner. And this one did. It was a fantastic gift, and it was a great show. And I just looked up online, and looks like they're back together again. So maybe I'll
Oh,
go up there again. So
yeah, that's nice. That is always impressive when clearly, because it takes some thought and it takes
yeah.
some real care in figuring out what the best thing to do is. So obviously that's what makes it romantic.
And then that goes from thoughtful to not so thoughtful, which is our post facto segment.
It's a mistake. It's a mistake.
This is where we make corrections from a previous episode, point out, stumbling over our words or saying the same words over and over again. And in this one, we even have a negative review. So this is going to be a good one. Why don't you start us off? Because I think you're the main participant this week, Tom.
Yeah. So I've started to use post facto, I think, to also just flesh out stuff that either we couldn't think of in the original episode, or that I just kind of blew right past. And one of those was, I listened to it and I have to admit I made myself laugh when I made reference to that fucking Billy Joel song when we were talking about list songs. And it just seems like I should point it out. Most people probably know the song. It's "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel. It came out on the album Stormfront in 1989. And I hated it when it came out. But I was like the only one, as far as I could tell, because I did a little, Googling, and it reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was nominated for a Grammy for Record of the Year. For the life of me, I don't know how or why that's the case, but it's true. And it sure as hell got a ton of radio play, because one of the reasons I hated it is because I felt like that's all I heard for about 6 months. I did see, however, that Billy Joel later admitted he didn't like that song either. And if you look at recent or relatively recent critical reviews, most critics agree that it's one of the worst pop songs that he's ever made. So I kind of feel like that supports my response. But I did think it would be worthwhile to at least tell you which song I was talking about at the time.
Well, I'm not a critic, but that song sucks.
I'm with you, man. That fucking Billy Joel song. Anyway, you mentioned also we had a negative review. I'm going to let the reviewer be anonymous. If he contacts me and says he doesn't want to be anonymous, that'll be fine too. But I received a text message. There's not an email, and we do have an email address now, so you can leave negative reviews. You can actually email them directly to us. But this was a text, and it concluded by saying, and this is, by the way, this is about last episode, and it basically is about our discussion of our rules for making playlists. And this reviewer summed it all up by saying, "Besides you and Chris, nobody cares. Sorry." So it's negative, but I laughed when I first heard it, and I laugh every time I think about it.
I'm having a hard time seeing what's negative about it. I mean,
that's the thing, is I don't think this reviewer necessarily understood why we started a podcast in the first place.
if we could somehow record this and keep it somewhere, we wouldn't even publish it. But
We
this
would
way
just
we
send
can
it
go
back and forth.
listen. Yeah.
I had one other thing. I mentioned a couple episodes ago that one of our frequent listeners, good friend, Joe Pay, former roommate of ours, had informed me that there was a book written as a sequel to the film Heat, which is one of my favorite films. And it's just called Heat 2, which I feel is an unfortunate title, but at least you know what it's connected to. And Joe Pay suggested that I read it. He wanted me to know it existed. And I just finished it last night. And I will say that it starts out a little slow. And I thought, well, I don't think this is going to, kind of match up with the film or live up to the, how good the film was. It starts a little bit slow, and it actually works as both a prequel and a sequel to the film. And I didn't see how that was going to all come together. It was written by Michael Mann, who wrote the script and directed Heat. And goddamn, if he didn't hit it out of the park by the end of the book. It's really, really good. And you can buy it. I bought it digitally, for, I don't know, like $5. And I would give it a 4 out of 5 eggs burritos with sour cream if I were reviewing it, just because I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and I feel like Joe should deserves some kudos for that, because I definitely appreciated it.
Nice job, Joe Pay.
Yeah.
Decent recommendation from a Pittsburgh fan. Imagine that. Okay, that's going to take us to our playlist picks. I'll go ahead and start. I think I honored every rule that no one cares about but us in choosing this one. So I went with the band that is now in my library. I've listened to several of their songs, but they came to me through probably a Spotify recommendation. Could have been YouTube Music, whichever one I was listening to. But the band is called the Ballroom Thieves. It's a husband and wife. It's not exactly the music that I'm known for listening to, but the song is Anybody Else. It's from their 2016 album of the same name, but it's, much more of a folky type of approach and instrumentation that I don't often have. It's I'm sure it's not, but it's a lot closer to, ballroom type of stuff than I would probably ever listen to. That's not quite fair, but it's just different than what I usually listen to. And it has struck me as just a really great, catchy song. And it's all about, never wanting anybody else. I mean, that's what they repeat throughout the song. And I will quickly pull up the lyrics here, but it's well worth the listen. It would be probably the first third, the second third of a playlist, because it doesn't have that, it's not a kick-ass song from the beginning. It starts a little slow, and you'd be listening to it going, oh, here goes Chris again, single digits on the count. But it's just, songs like, and I'm going to not give it credit because I'm saying them instead of singing them. And on the last episode, that's the post facto, I should say, is I was dumb enough to actually sort of sing a lyric last episode.
Yeah, that didn't sound anything like the songs.
That wasn't good.
I meant to bring that up. I was like, that's not what they sounded like at all.
So this is one of my favorite parts of the song, though. Well, every note I play, it doesn't sound the same when she's not listening, and I am missing her. Well, I never wanted anybody else. No, I never wanted anybody else. Whenever she leaves me behind, think I'm a fool not to be by her side. Oh, I never wanted anybody else. And though it sounds like a breakup song, I'm convinced that it's not. I don't think they really broke up. So I'm going with this as a pure on love song. So my recommendation, Anybody Else by the Ballroom Thieves. Sorry, my playlist choice.
That's a great band name, by the way.
Yeah, it's an awesome name. That's what got me into them at first. I almost went to skip it because it starts out really slow. I'm like, I got to give them a few more seconds with that band name. And I'm glad I did. So
yeah, that's good. So my pick for our season 2 playlist is, well, you know me. I'm going to tell you about my honorable mention first.
Of course.
Before I get to my pick. So I can sneak another one in there. But one of the first ones I thought of, well, actually, we talked about it. I don't have to go any further because I did. I mentioned Chuck E.'s in Love. I love that song. I really thought it would be good. But I also felt that for our playlist, if we're trying to give people some artists that maybe they haven't heard of, Rickie Lee Jones has been around since, well, 1979. So most people probably have at least some idea who she is. And the other song that I had really considered that I am going to put on the playlist is a song called I Love You Always. It's by Tommy Prine. And Tommy Prine is actually John Prine's son. However, he doesn't sing at all like John Prine. And I'm a John Prine fan from way back. He is one of the masters of the story song. He was a Chicago guy, and he's got a very distinctive voice. Tommy Prine's voice is a little sweeter than I normally like, and I think that you normally like necessarily. But he really has excellent lyrics in all of his songs. This is, it's from an album. The album is called This Far South, and it just came out in 2023. I don't know if it's his debut album, but I wasn't aware of him before this album came out. And this is just a classic full-on love song. And it's very short. I think it might be less than 2.5 minutes long. And it's just him. You can just tell he's got a girlfriend or a wife, and he was like, I got the song for her. It is slow paced, but it's just very, very pretty. Instrumentally, it's very well done. The line that I really like is towards the end of the song. He sings, "Time can be tricky. A decade or two will feel like a weekend when I'm with you." And I think that probably captures romance and real love as well as any lyric I've heard. So I am recommending "I Love You Always." This will go on our season 2 playlist by Tommy Prine from 2023.
Yeah, I went into it thinking he was going to sound much more like his father, who I'm a huge fan of too, but much different sound. Had not heard of him either. I think he is newly recording, so I'm going to check out some more of his stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like Justin Townes Earl. Although to me, depending on the song, you can hear Justin's dad in his his voice and how he phrases things. Sometimes there's a little bit of the Steve Earle twang. I don't get that at all from Tommy Prine's stuff, but I'm sure that's intentional. And he certainly, at least with this album, I think he stands on his own 2 feet. So,
and I'll close it out with this. This is yet another son or daughter who is singing, who we listened to when we were younger. So
yes,
we had. You already mentioned
Steve Earle's
son. I know Kevin Welch's son is in a band. Now we got John Prine. I also mentioned earlier Hank Williams Sr.'s granddaughter, and that's Holly Williams. And the song is "Waiting on June." So
that's what the
I
song
got
is.
it.
Yeah.
I snuck it in under the wire, so it doesn't have to be post facto.
No post facto. Yeah, Paul Simon's kid is singing now, and it's just it's crazy.
So you started this with love and 57-year-old men. We're going to end with just feeling like old 57-year-old men. So
that seems fitting. Those are our playlist songs for this week. Every week we add at least 2 songs to our playlist. Those playlists are published on Spotify. They're on Amazon Music. They're on YouTube Music and Apple Music. Our podcast itself, the episode can be listened to from Spotify, which is where we originate, but also on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, and our own website. Tell us about the website.
I will tell you about the website. So I do want to give a quick heads up that it's being hosted by GoDaddy. Their tools are very helpful for someone who's not a professional website designer. And I'm fairly proud of what we put out there, other than the Steelers colors that I'm having to honor because of our bet. But I'm hoping the Bengals can redeem themselves and I can go to orange and black next year. But no, the website is the exact URL is thirdsonginpodcast.com, all letters, all straight through, thirdsonginpodcast.com. On the front page, you can click, it'll take you, you'll see actually the last several episodes. We're adding new content to it just about daily. I will go ahead and add the 3 5 out of 5 ratings that we had for recommendations this week, and it'll be published at the same time that the podcast is. So still growing. You can email us from there. You can send us messages. We welcome any and all feedback, including negative, like we got from some unnamed listener last week, but doing all we can to get this information out there and hopefully make it a good experience for everyone.
Yeah, we also have an as mentioned page on the website, which will allow you to go to the sites or links to our guests, and we hope to have more guests in the future. So please check us out at thirdsonginpodcast.com. And thanks for listening to Third Song In with Chris and Tom.
Why can I not talk?
Why, God, why?
So it just went right out of my head.
Say it. just fucking say it. You can say it.
I had it all prepped out in my head. What the fuck is wrong with me?